The retirement rules that worked for your parents may actually be putting you at risk in 2025. Do you know which ones could be draining your savings right now? For decades, people were told that if you worked hard, paid off your home, saved a little in the bank and counted on Social Security, you'd be safe. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Those rules were written for a completely different world. One where healthcare costs were lower, lifespans were shorter, and the economy looked nothing like it does today. Seniors who cling to those outdated rules are discovering the painful reality. The very strategies that once guaranteed security may now quietly erode your freedom, leaving you vulnerable just when you deserve peace of mind the most. Think about it. How many of us still believe that Social Security is enough to cover the basics? Or that keeping money safe in the bank means it's truly protected? In today's economy, those assumptions can be dangerous traps. And yet, millions of retirees are following them without realizing the risk until it's too late. That's why this message is urgent. If you're over 60, the old path won't keep you safe anymore. If you're over 60, hit like and subscribe, because the advice you'll hear today could save your retirement from collapsing. What you're about to learn isn't just theory. It's about practical changes you can make right now before outdated rules drain away your security. Meet Elvric Marlowe, a 67-year-old retired high school history teacher from a quiet town in Ohio. For most of his life, Elvric was the kind of man who believed in doing things the right way. He was steady, dependable, and careful with his money. He taught American history for over 3 decades, guiding students through lessons about the Constitution, civil rights, and world events. And when it came to planning his future, he leaned on the same lessons of discipline and sacrifice that his own parents had lived by. Elvric followed what many seniors today recognize as the old retirement rules. He trusted Social Security to provide the foundation of his retirement income. He avoided taking risks in the stock market, believing that safety meant keeping his money close, mostly in savings accounts and a small pension. And when it came to his house, he clung to the idea that as long as he kept up with his mortgage, he would always have security, a roof over his head, and something to pass down to his children. These choices felt safe, familiar, and responsible, because for years they were the advice repeated by financial experts, parents, and neighbors alike. But in 2025, Elvric began to feel the ground shift beneath his feet. Suddenly, the rules he had built his retirement upon no longer seemed to hold. Prices for everyday essentials crept higher and higher: groceries, utilities, even gas. The check from Social Security, once reassuring, now felt smaller each month as inflation chewed away at his purchasing power. Medical costs surged, with prescription bills and insurance premiums climbing faster than he ever expected. And when an unexpected repair on his home demanded thousands of dollars, Elvric found himself caught off guard, realizing that his so-called manageable mortgage wasn't the safety net he thought it was. For Elvric, it was more than numbers on a page. It was the sinking feeling of realizing that the advice he had trusted, advice passed down through generations, wasn't designed for today's realities. What once guaranteed stability now exposed him to risk. His story reflects what countless seniors across America are beginning to face: the unsettling truth that the retirement playbook of the past doesn't always work in the present. And that's why Elvric's journey matters. It's not just about one man's struggle. It's about the wake-up call for anyone over 60 who still believes the old rules can keep them safe. Because, as Elvric is discovering, those rules may no longer protect the freedom and peace of mind every retiree deserves. Old Rule 1, the Social Security illusion. For decades, one of the most common pieces of advice for retirement was simple: don't worry too much. Social Security will cover your basics. It was the safety net that millions of Americans trusted. And for a long time, that seemed true. In earlier decades, the monthly check was enough to pay for groceries, utilities, and maybe even a modest vacation once in a while. Seniors felt reassured knowing they had a steady income stream for life. But in 2025, the picture looks very different. Inflation has quietly eaten away at the buying power of those checks. What used to feel like security now feels more like a squeeze. Consider this. The average Social Security benefit today covers barely enough for rent or property taxes in many areas, let alone food, medical expenses, transportation, or the rising costs of prescriptions. And while the government does adjust Social Security with cost of living increases, those adjustments often lag far behind the actual increase in living expenses. For Elvric Marlowe, this reality hit hard. Every month his check arrives like clockwork, but the comfort it once brought is gone. He notices it most in the grocery store. The familiar cart that once filled up with a week's worth of essentials now costs nearly twice as much, forcing him to make difficult choices. Less fresh produce, fewer cuts of quality meat, more generic items. At home, the electric and heating bills creep higher each winter, draining more of his fixed income. And at the pharmacy counter, the co-pays for his medications eat up what little is left. This is the hidden danger of the Social Security illusion. It isn't that the program disappeared, it's that it no longer stretches far enough to meet real needs. Experts estimate that seniors relying only on Social Security today face a 30 to 40% shortfall when compared to their true living expenses. That gap doesn't just show up in numbers on a budget sheet, it shows up in stress, sleepless nights, and difficult sacrifices. It's the choice between filling a prescription and buying healthier food. It's the decision to delay fixing a leaky roof because there simply isn't enough left over after the bills are paid. Elvric began to realize that what he thought of as his foundation for retirement was no longer solid ground. He had built his financial future on a promise that doesn't hold up in today's economy. And like millions of other retirees, he's had to face the uncomfortable truth. Social Security alone isn't enough. That's why modern retirees must rethink this old rule. Instead of depending solely on government benefits, building additional income streams, whether through part-time work, smart investments, or downsizing expenses, has become essential for protecting independence. Do you know someone living only on Social Security? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might inspire others facing the same struggle. Old Rule 2, the savings trap. For generations, the phrase "keep your money safe in the bank" was almost sacred advice. Parents told their children to save diligently, and banks were seen as the ultimate place of security. After all, what could be safer than seeing your balance sitting in a neat row of digits, untouched and guaranteed? To many retirees, that feeling of safety, knowing their money was protected, was worth more than any risk of investing. But in 2025, that old belief is quietly betraying millions of seniors. While the money in the bank may not disappear, its value steadily erodes year after year. Why? Because interest rates simply don't keep up with inflation. When prices rise faster than your savings grow, every dollar buys less and less. This isn't an obvious loss like the stock market dropping overnight. It's a slow leak, the kind you barely notice until one day the bucket is almost empty. Elvric Marlowe fell into this trap. After retiring, he parked $120,000 into a savings account, believing he was being cautious and responsible. That money sat untouched for years, giving him peace of mind whenever he checked his statements. But while the number never went down, the reality was grim. Groceries doubled in price, home repairs cost more than ever, and medical expenses skyrocketed. That $120,000 might still look the same on paper, but in real terms, it no longer had the same power it once did. By 2025, Elvric realized that what once could have covered several years of expenses now stretched only half as far. The trap here is subtle. Retirees believe they're preserving wealth, but by avoiding all growth opportunities, they're unintentionally watching their future shrink. It's like locking your money in a box that slowly gets smaller while you stand by, proud that you never touched it. So, what's the solution? It's not about reckless investing or chasing risky stocks. The modern retiree must learn how to diversify safely. Options like government bonds, annuities, or reliable dividend-paying stocks can provide steady income while protecting against inflation. Even small adjustments, shifting a portion of savings into assets that grow, can help your retirement dollars stretch further. For Elvric, learning to move past the comfort of seeing safety in a bank balance was difficult. But once he began exploring safer investments, he realized that security isn't just about preserving numbers, it's about preserving buying power. And this leads to the next outdated rule, the one that surprises most retirees, because it isn't about money in the bank at all. It's about the very roof over your head. Old Rule 3, the housing myth. For decades, one of the golden promises of retirement was simple. If you own your home outright, you'll always be secure. It was the dream most people worked toward. Decades of mortgage payments finally behind you, no more rent checks, and the pride of walking through a house that was completely yours. To many seniors, this milestone symbolized freedom. After all, how could anything feel safer than living in a home you don't owe money on? But in 2025, the reality is far more complicated. The home that once felt like an asset can quickly turn into a financial burden. Rising property taxes in many areas eat into fixed incomes. Homeowners' insurance premiums, especially with the increase in natural disasters, continue to climb. And the cost of maintenance, The unexpected repairs, upgrades, or replacements can strike like a lightning bolt at the worst possible time. Unlike a rental, where a landlord covers major repairs, a homeowner shoulders it all alone. This is the harsh lesson Elvric Marlowe discovered one winter. His furnace, which had kept his family warm for over 20 years, suddenly gave out. Replacing it wasn't optional, it was survival. The bill came to nearly $6,000. For someone on a limited retirement income, that wasn't just an inconvenience, it was devastating. The very home he thought would protect him was draining his financial reserves faster than he could replenish them. And that was just one repair. The roof still needed attention, the plumbing showed signs of age, and every creak in the floorboards reminded him that owning a home isn't free. This is why the housing myth is so dangerous. Ownership doesn't always equal security. For many seniors, the cost of holding onto a large family home becomes heavier with each passing year, and yet letting go can feel emotionally impossible. Memories are tied to every room. The holidays celebrated, the family photos on the walls, the milestones lived under that roof. Downsizing can feel like giving up a part of yourself, but there is another way to look at it. Downsizing or renting strategically isn't about losing, it's about gaining flexibility and freedom. A smaller home means smaller bills, less maintenance, and more cash flow for the things that truly matter. Healthcare, experiences, or even the joy of helping grandchildren with their education. Renting in retirement, once seen as a failure, can actually be a smart move, freeing retirees from the unpredictability of big repair bills while giving them the choice to live closer to family or in a community designed for seniors. For Elvric, facing the furnace repair was a wake-up call. He began considering whether holding onto his big house in Ohio was really serving him, or if it was time to embrace a simpler, more sustainable living arrangement. Would you ever consider downsizing in retirement, or is your home too full of memories? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your perspective. Old Rule 4, the healthcare blind spot. One of the most dangerous assumptions many retirees still hold is this: don't worry, Medicare will cover most of your needs. It sounds reassuring, doesn't it? You pay into the system your whole working life, and when retirement comes, the government steps in to protect your health. For years, this belief has given millions of Americans a sense of safety. But in 2025, that confidence often crumbles the moment reality hits. The truth is, Medicare covers about 80% of approved medical costs. That sounds decent, until you realize what falls into the remaining 20% and what doesn't count at all. Long-term care, dental, vision, hearing aids, and certain prescription drugs. Largely excluded. Those gaps can turn a routine retirement into a financial minefield. It's not the doctor's visit for a cold that drains savings. It's the hospital stay, the specialized treatment, or the long-term care that families never see coming until it's too late. For Elvric Marlowe, the blind spot became painfully clear when his wife, Maricela, developed a health condition requiring specialized treatment. Medicare covered part of it, but the hidden costs piled up. Co-pays, out-of-network services, and prescriptions not fully included. By the end, the bill was an overwhelming $15,000 out-of-pocket expense. For a couple living on fixed income, that wasn't just a bill. It was a blow to their retirement security. It meant dipping into savings, postponing home repairs, and tightening their budget in ways they never anticipated. This is the healthcare blind spot. Retirees assume the system has them covered, when in reality, the system only provides a partial safety net. Too many seniors discover this too late, forced into difficult choices between financial stability and the care they or their loved ones desperately need. So how can retirees protect themselves? First, consider supplemental insurance, like Medigap or Medicare Advantage plans, to help cover some of the costs that original Medicare leaves behind. Second, long-term care planning is critical. Nursing homes or in-home assistance can run into the tens of thousands per year, and without planning, families often burn through savings shockingly fast. Finally, every retiree should set aside an emergency healthcare fund, even if it feels difficult, because medical surprises are not a question of if, they're a matter of when. For Elvric, that $15,000 wake-up call shifted how he saw retirement. It wasn't just about having enough for daily life. It was about building a cushion for the unexpected storms. And as tough as that lesson was, it opened his eyes to a bigger truth. Some old rules aren't just outdated, they're dangerous. And now, the biggest outdated rule, the one that could destroy your retirement in one single move. Old Rule 5, the don't touch principle rule. For generations, One of the most repeated retirement mantras was this: live only off the interest and never touch the principal. It was meant to be the ultimate safety net. If you preserved your nest egg and only lived on the interest it generated, you would, in theory, never run out of money. On paper, this sounded foolproof. But in 2025, this rule has quietly become one of the most misleading and dangerous pieces of advice seniors can follow. Here's the problem. Interest rates today are unpredictable, inflation is relentless, and people are living longer than ever before. That means the old plan, keeping money in safe accounts and never dipping into the principal, often forces retirees into living far too frugally. Instead of enjoying the retirement they worked decades to earn, they find themselves saying no to opportunities, experiences, and even meaningful family moments, all out of fear of spending too much. Ironically, this overly cautious approach can backfire, leaving people with large balances at the end of their lives, but fewer memories, less joy, and sometimes even unmet needs along the way. Elvric Marlowe knows this tension all too well. His granddaughter, a bright young woman with dreams of becoming a teacher herself, was accepted into college. Tuition and books were expensive, and she needed help. Elvric had the money sitting right there in his account, but he hesitated, gripped by that old voice in his head telling him to never touch the principal. For weeks he debated, torn between holding tightly to what he had and stepping in to help. In the end, it wasn't the numbers that pushed him. It was the thought of his granddaughter looking back and remembering that her grandfather was there for her. That moment revealed to Elvric that clinging to outdated financial rules was costing him more than money. It was costing him life itself. The truth is, modern retirement isn't about hoarding a balance, it's about managing it wisely. Strategies like the 4% rule, adjusted for today's economic realities, or dynamic withdrawals that flex with your needs, can help retirees find balance. Instead of living with constant fear of running out, you live with a flexible plan that allows you to enjoy life while protecting your future. That's what today's retirees need. Not rigid rules, but strategies that adapt to the times. Elvric's story is a reminder that money is not just about survival. It's a tool for creating memories, protecting dignity, and giving meaning to the years after 60. Would you spend a little to enjoy life, or do you feel safer never touching your savings? Share your thoughts. I'd love to hear how you see it. For much of his early retirement, Elvric Marlowe carried the weight of worry on his shoulders. He had done everything he thought was right, followed the old rules, saved diligently, paid into Social Security, and worked hard to protect his family home. Yet time and again, those very rules left him exposed. The Social Security check that shrank against inflation, the savings that looked safe but quietly lost value, the house that demanded expensive repairs, the surprise medical bills Medicare didn't cover, and the paralyzing fear of touching his principal. All of it left Elvric feeling trapped, anxious, and uncertain about his future. Retirement, the season of life that was supposed to bring peace, instead brought a quiet undercurrent of stress. But here's where Elvric's story changes. Instead of clinging to those outdated beliefs, he began to adapt. He realized that survival in 2025 wasn't about sticking to the rigid formulas of the past. It was about creating a flexible plan for the present. He stopped viewing retirement as a single path and started treating it as a mix of strategies designed to give him stability and freedom. He diversified his income, no longer relying solely on Social Security, but combining it with small, safe investments and part-time consulting work that kept his mind active. He and his wife made the courageous choice to downsize, moving from their larger home into a more manageable, affordable space that freed up cash and reduced stress. For the first time, Elvric felt his home was a source of comfort, not a financial trap. They also faced healthcare planning head-on, setting aside funds specifically for emergencies and adding a supplemental plan to guard against diva.